The scale of the government's initiative will match the challenges of our time. Buckingham Palace had never felt heavier. In the quiet, solemn green drawing room, King Charles stood alone, trembling yet resolute. "I can no longer be your king," he said, his voice firm, breaking with centuries of tradition. This wasn't about politics or scandal. It was something far more profoundly human. William and Catherine were struck silent, overcome with emotion as they received the news. The crown seemed to hang in the air, heavier than words in the weight of the silence. The monarchy had entered a new chapter, and the truth would shake its very foundations. The battle against a hidden illness had changed everything. Behind the glittering ceremonies and carefully crafted statements, a different reality was unfolding quietly behind closed doors. If you find this story interesting, leave a comment with the number 1, if not comment 0. Don't forget to like, share the video, and drop your thoughts in the comment section below. Make sure to subscribe to our channel so you won't miss any more fascinating videos about the royal family. Now let's dive into the story. King Charles has been quietly battling a far more serious illness than what only his closest inner circle knows. The official announcement made months ago spoke of treatment, rest, and hope. But behind palace walls, the truth is far more heartbreaking. It all began with persistent fatigue, delayed appointments, shortened speeches, and early endings to his engagements. But it was the family who noticed the deeper signs: trembling hands, labored breathing when standing too long. Discreet hospital visits were carefully scheduled between royal duties. A diagnosis confirmed in silence by a team of specialists revealed cancer, a rare form for a monarch. The turning point came on a cold afternoon at Sandringham. After weeks of exhaustion, Charles collapsed in the middle of a private policy briefing, sinking into an armchair as everyone looked on in shock. Prince William was the only one left in the room. That moment shattered all pretense. That night, doctors delivered the devastating news his condition was worsening far faster than expected. "You have months, not years," they told him. "You are not just a king, you're a man, a father, a grandfather." The next morning, Charles reportedly called William into his private quarters. No bodyguards, no attendants, just father and son and the truth between them. "I want to be here for the grandchildren," Charles whispered, eyes fixed on a photo of the kids. "I want to see them grow up, while I still can." What made this decision even heavier was Catherine. Her battle with cancer had only recently shown signs of improvement. Watching her fight with such quiet strength stirred something deep within Charles, a mix of admiration and heartbreak. He had witnessed great loss in his lifetime and knew deep down that the kingdom could not bear the weight of having two monarchs silently confronting such personal trials at the same time. A senior aide at the palace revealed that the king had come to a quiet realization he could no longer battle his illness while carrying the immense responsibility of leading a nation. Continuing like this was no longer an option. His decision wasn't born out of failure, it was rooted in love for his family's legacy and for the fleeting time he could never reclaim. The emotional conversation between father and son didn't happen inside a palace chamber. It unfolded at Highgrove in Charles's private study, a room faintly scented with wood polish and old paper. This room had hosted national briefings, quiet family moments, and years of personal reflection. But that evening, the air felt different. A father and son stood at opposite ends of a life-altering decision. William arrived in the late afternoon after the staff had gone home. Silence filled the house, intentional, almost sacred. Charles stood by the window, gazing out at the garden he had tended for decades. He didn't turn when William entered. "You can't just give up the crown like this," William said, his voice tight with emotion. "Not like this. The country still needs you." Charles remained quiet for a moment, then slowly turned. And for the first time in a long while, William didn't see a king. He saw a man exhausted, trembling from the weight of everything. His eyes were red, his shoulders slumped, and when he finally spoke, his voice cracked. "I'm not giving up anything," Charles whispered. "I'm choosing to hold on to what little time I have left." And in that moment, William's heart broke. Tears streamed down Charles's cheeks. "Every morning I wake up, I don't know if I'll make it through the day without collapsing. I can't give this country the king it deserves anymore, but I can still be a grandfather. I need to see them grow up while I still can. That's the only thing I'm asking for." William clenched his jaw, torn between duty and emotion. The king in him longed for tradition and responsibility. But the son remembered his mother's fading voice, the losses that had once stolen their time, and now threatened to do so again. Then Catherine entered, carrying with her a quiet calm in the midst of the storm. She didn't take sides. She didn't say much. Catherine gently took William's hand, holding it firmly so he could breathe a little easier, easing the weight pressing down on his shoulders. And in that moment, everything shifted. William's eyes welled with tears and his voice broke as he whispered, "All right, I'll do it. But not for the crown, for her." The decision wasn't sealed by royal decree, it was forged in the quiet vow of a son to his father. The abdication speech that followed echoed with quiet heartbreak. The blue drawing room had never witnessed a moment like this. It was once the setting where Queen Elizabeth delivered her serene Christmas messages beneath twinkling lights, peaceful, dignified, timeless. But now, the same chandeliers overhead carried a strange and somber glow. Cameras rolled, curtains were drawn tight. A handful of trusted aides stood nearby, barely breathing. The silence was thick-heavy with the weight of a historical shift. King Charles stood at the center of the room beneath a towering portrait of his mother. His hands trembled as he unfolded the parchment in front of him. His voice, usually steady in the most difficult moments, now wavered, quivering with each word. He looked straight into the camera, his eyes vacant, then began, "I have carried the weight of duty, service, and tradition for more than a lifetime, but the time has come to pass on that responsibility." He paused as if swallowing the heavy burden ahead. "I hereby abdicate." The room fell utterly silent, unable to believe the words they had just heard. A quiet sob broke from behind the lens. Hardened men, seasoned palace staff, struggled to hold back tears they never thought they would shed. Charles continued carefully, slowly, "I hereby appoint Prince William and his wife Catherine as my successors, entrusted with all the responsibilities of the monarchy effective immediately." That declaration shattered tradition like glass. There was no gradual handover, no waiting for time to quietly pass, just a definitive farewell, a decree from a father passing the torch to the next generation. For those who listened closely, the speech was more than a formal ritual. It carried deep sorrow and urgency. "My time as I now understand it is no longer measured in years, but in moments." Those words struck like thunder on a clear day. It was a quiet confession hidden beneath a polished exterior. He wasn't stepping down for politics or glory, but because his time was running out. When the message ended, the cameras stopped rolling. Yet the room remained silent, frozen in place. A few staff members who had served 3 kings stood motionless, unable to believe their eyes. This was not just the end of a reign, it was the end of an era. A new chapter began filled with mixed emotions and heavy responsibility. William and Catherine entered the private sitting room beside the King's Gallery in Buckingham Palace, the hallway still echoing with whispered voices of palace staff and members of the royal family. There were no cameras or lenses to capture this moment, just the two of them, a married couple sitting in silence as they faced the new reality with the future of the monarchy suddenly resting on their shoulders. The atmosphere in the room was thick not just from the weight of family history and the burdens of a dynasty, but also from lingering doubts about their ability and what the future held. The two sat in silence for several minutes, the only sounds the ticking clock and their steady breathing. Finally, Catherine was the first to break the quiet, her voice trembling soft as a whisper. "Are we truly ready?" She stared at William, her eyes filled with both worry and deep love. The children. They're still too young to understand what's happening. William didn't answer right away. His gaze drifted toward the fireplace, his jaw clenched tight as his mind suddenly flooded with memories woven from pride and pain. He had always known this day would come, but never imagined it would arrive like this, not with his father's voice still trembling in his ears, not with the crown passed to him before he even reached 50. The heartbreak wasn't about titles or power, but about the moments he thought would last forever. The years he believed his family would have together now vanished in an instant. That evening, in the family's private room, free from the pressures of the media and royal protocol, they gathered their 3 children close. There was no official announcement, no flowery words, just 3 parents sitting beside 3 small faces filled with surprise and uncertainty. George sat up straight, sensing the gravity hanging over the room. Charlotte curled into her mother's arms, feeling warmth, but quietly absorbing an unspoken fear. Louis fidgeted constantly, his eyes darting around, unable to understand why everything had suddenly changed. William gently began with soft but meaningful words. "Grandpa is stepping down from the throne," his voice lowered. "From now on, your mother and I will carry much greater responsibilities. There will be difficult times ahead, and we will face them together." George furrowed his brow, his eyes filled with determination and a maturity beyond his years. "I understand, Dad. I will always be by your side helping you." His words moved William deeply and filled him with pride. But Charlotte's reaction was completely different. Her lips trembled, and tears silently traced down her cheeks, not resisting, but quietly accepting the deep pain within. It wasn't anger or fear, but the pain of a little girl realizing that the world she knew would never be the same again. Her carefully protected childhood was suddenly shortened and transformed by the heavy responsibilities of the family. Louis looked around, his innocent eyes confused and not yet understanding everything. "Why is everyone crying?" he asked, his voice tinged with innocence and bewilderment as he looked to his older siblings. Catherine gently embraced Louis, whispering soothing words into his ear, as if to shield and calm the little boy's confusion. That entire night, there were no royal duties, no documents or protocols, just Catherine wrapping Charlotte in a warm blanket, William tucking George in longer than usual, while Louis finally drifted to sleep in the loving embrace of his family. Though aware of the many challenges and pressures ahead, that moment was when the family felt most supported and close. They simply wanted to hold on to love and peace before life officially turned to a new chapter full of upheaval and trials. Behind that monumental decision lay hidden crises within the royal family that few knew about, a quiet yet profound struggle for the future of the kingdom and their family. For months, a quiet worry spread beneath the usual grandeur of Buckingham Palace. Whispers echoed through the corridors, unusual absences occurred, and there were moments when King Charles appeared fatigued after short walks or seemed uneasy during brief meetings. To the public, he remained a symbol of strength and resilience. However, behind the palace's fortified walls, doubts grew and unspoken questions lingered. Was the king truly well enough to fulfill his duties? Close advisors had known about his cancer diagnosis long before it was officially announced. At first, treatment plans brought a glimmer of hope. But over time, those closest to him witnessed a clear decline: weight loss, trembling hands, and numerous last-minute cancellations. The palace issued gentle statements allowing the king to rest more and scale back his official duties. Yet those closest to him understood that his decline was accelerating. Behind the scenes, constitutional advisors quietly prepared for unimaginable scenarios. What would happen if a monarch was no longer fit to rule but refused to abdicate? The United Kingdom had never faced such a situation before. Queen Elizabeth had reigned for 70 years, and the monarchy's machinery was never designed to operate with a weakened sovereign. Notably, Catherine's recovery brought renewed strength to the royal family. As she gradually returned to political engagements after her battle with cancer, her grace and resilience stood in stark contrast to Charles's declining health. Catherine stood as a symbol of resilience, and Charles felt this deeply. If she could fight and rise again, perhaps it was time for him to step back, rest, and grant himself relief. Then a final grave warning came from his doctor. During a private consultation at Windsor, the doctor emphasized that the stress was worsening his condition. If he continued in his role, his life would be at serious risk. It was not a suggestion, but a clear boundary. If you enjoyed the story and want to keep exploring, don't forget to share the video and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any of our upcoming content. Now let's dive back into the story. That evening, William and Catherine sat down with Charles. No titles, no press, just a family. William spoke first, his voice steady but full of respect. "We need you alive more than we need you on the throne." Catherine, eyes weary yet resolute, added, "This is not defeat, it is wisdom." For the first time in weeks, Charles said nothing in protest. He simply nodded gently. This was not surrender, but a choice with deep meaning. It was a decision born from quiet fear, deep love for family, and a profound understanding that legacy isn't built solely on power, but sometimes on knowing when to let go. A bittersweet sorrow mingled with hope enveloped the entire nation. On the morning of King Charles's abdication day, the atmosphere across England shifted from stunned silence to profound grief. The sun rose over a clear blue sky, yet the heart of London felt darker than ever before. Outside Buckingham Palace, small groups of people gathered spontaneously, tourists, loyalists, and skeptics alike, drawn by an event that transcended all traditions. Many clutched newspapers with shocking headlines, "I can no longer be your king." Tears streamed down faces across generations, from the elderly to the youngest children. Some brought flowers, while others stood silently struggling to absorb the staggering reality. Across social media, emotions erupted and spread rapidly with every passing moment. Within hours, two hashtags dominated global conversations: Chalk Save the King, and William and Catherine. One carried the weight of loss, the other held the promise of an unwritten future. Memes, tribute videos, and side-by-side comparisons flooded social media platforms. The vibrant young Charles, now visibly frail, contrasted sharply with the image of William standing resolute beside Catherine at Diana's funeral, now ready to bear the weight of the crown. Public reactions were complex and layered. Beneath it all lay a raw, genuine sorrow for a king who had waited his whole life only to reign for a fleeting moment. There was also something different, a quiet optimism spreading throughout the nation. It seemed that perhaps the monarchy was beginning to find a new heartbeat through the younger generation, in whom the people had placed their trust. Polls accurately reflected the complex mood of the country. 78% expressed sadness over the news of King Charles's health, yet 84% showed strong support for William and Catherine stepping up to their new roles. It was no longer just sympathy. It was a faith forged over time. That trust stemmed from witnessing William and Catherine navigate countless crises with resilience and a deep sense of responsibility. Congratulations and messages of support poured in from around the globe. Notably, the President of the United States personally called to express his support. Leaders of the Commonwealth nations in Canada, Australia, and New Zealand also issued statements thanking King Charles for his dedicated service and warmly congratulating the new heir couple. Even the European royal families, often rivals in discreet diplomatic circles, could not hide their respect, calling it a courageous and profound decision. But perhaps where this sentiment resonated most deeply was within the Commonwealth, where the monarchy is sometimes seen as distant. Charles's abdication touched the hearts of millions, symbolizing stability and peaceful transition. The world witnessed the closing of an old chapter and the opening of a new one, united by the pain of farewell, yet bound together by hope. The crown did not shatter. It was laid down with serenity and dignity. In this context, the reality of the young princes and princesses' lives also changed profoundly. The abdication was not just a change of titles, but affected their entire childhood. A new rhythm began to seep into the private corridors of Kensington Palace in Windsor. Royal tutors, protocol advisors, and training specialists were urgently summoned to ensure William and Catherine's children were thoroughly prepared for the future. It was no longer a gradual familiarization with royal life. The princes and princess were now immersed in a strict education, rigorous training, and tighter protection than ever before. George, then just 12 years old, bore the heaviest responsibility he had ever faced. He was no longer simply the obvious heir, but a symbol of the future of the crown. George's days were no longer just about math lessons or simple science projects. Instead, he attended presentations on the Constitution, politics, and practiced mock speeches. The questions he asked often left even his advisors puzzled, as they revealed a curiosity and awareness far beyond his years. It was through this preparation that a future king was gradually taking shape, ready to face the responsibilities and challenges that lay ahead. What should I say when someone greets me on the street? Can I even refuse that Louis's tutors often describe him as focused and polite? But inside he carries worries far beyond his 7 years. Charlotte, only 10 years old, has quietly become a source of emotional support. When Louis sheds tears during lessons, it's Charlotte who gently places a hand on his shoulder to comfort him. Whenever George drifted into a daydream, Charlotte always knew how to pull him back to reality. Though she held no official title within the family space, she played the role of guardian, ever vigilant, and deeply attuned to everyone's emotions. For Louis, however, adapting to his new role was the greatest challenge. He didn't understand why people whispered about him, nor why carefree afternoons of play turned into strict lessons on etiquette. Once during a practice session, he burst into tears and asked his mother, "Can I still just be a kid?" Catherine gently knelt down, embraced him, and whispered, "You will always be my child." Catherine's days passed in a whirlwind of activity as she gradually transformed from an ordinary mother into a resilient queen, balancing public appearances with private training sessions. Yet with or without a crown, she never lost her maternal instincts. She always made time to tell bedtime stories to her children and held their hands every morning in the kitchen before the day began. Her strength didn't come from her status, but from the steadfastness in her heart. Through these trials, the family grew even closer. What seemed like a crisis that might tear them apart instead became the unbreakable glue that held them together. Dinner time had become a moment for the family to rest and share gentle conversations. Their walks in the garden turned into opportunities to recharge. They laughed more, hugged longer, and followed a sacred rule: no royal business at the dinner table. To the outside world, they appeared as a family steadily fulfilling their duties. But deep within, what truly defined them wasn't the formal ceremonies, it was love. And from that love, the next generation of leaders was quietly growing up. Charles' final farewell was the most meaningful gift he gave to his family. On a gloomy afternoon at Sandringham, the peaceful sanctuary of the royal lineage where they gathered by the fireplace, strolled through winter gardens, and cherished quiet traditions. This time the gathering was unlike any other. There were no speeches, no cameras. Only close loved ones invited by King Charles to a simple ceremony that everyone understood was the last moment not of duty, but of deep family love. Charles sat by the window wearing a soft sweater and neatly pressed trousers instead of the elaborate royal attire. The warm fire crackled gently behind him. The solemnity of Buckingham seemed to have vanished. In the quiet of Sandringham, he was simply a father, a grandfather, and for the first time in his life, that was enough. Louis was the first to burst into the room full of energy and innocence. Charles smiled, embraced him, and they spent precious minutes playing together, building puzzles, playing cards, laughing, needing nothing more than that. George arrived afterward, a bit hesitant, yet still alert. Charles motioned for him to come closer, placed a steady hand on his shoulder, and softly said, "You don't have to be perfect, just be a gift, just be kind." The words weren't grandiose, simply a legacy passed down. George nodded, his face reflecting the image of his father in youth, quiet, heavy with burden, yet resolute. Charlotte entered quietly and gracefully. She said nothing but embraced him. Charles held her tighter than expected and whispered, "Thank you for taking care of your little brothers." In the study, Charles called William closer. On the desk lay two items: William's mother's engagement ring and the antique goose quill pen once used by King George VI. Charles handed them to William not just as heirlooms, but as powerful symbols. The heartbeat of the monarchy now rested in new hands. Catherine stepped forward, her eyes weary yet resolute. She took Charles's hand and said, "We will make your Majesty proud." Charles smiled genuinely. "At last I can finally be a grandfather, and that is enough." No parade, no waving crowds, just family, a warm fire, and the gentle closing of an era. His crown was passed on, his duty fulfilled. Now it was time for peace. Catherine had never imagined she would wear the crown so soon. She had envisioned many years as the Duchess of Cambridge supporting William, raising their children and quietly building the family behind the scenes. The thought of becoming queen before turning 50 had never crossed her mind. But now she stepped into history not with fanfare, but with a silent determination. Her battle with cancer tested her more than any royal protocol ever could. In the quiet of hospital rooms and fragile days of recovery, she discovered a strength beyond courage, a sense of purpose.
Girls with their nails done.
That inner strength would help her face one of the most important roles in the world. Catherine wasn't simply following tradition, she was reshaping it. Behind the palace doors, she held meetings with advisors to modernize royal protocols, not for appearances, but for the future of her children. Less rigid, more transparent. A monarchy that doesn't stand above the people but walks alongside them, something the public clearly recognized. Overnight polls hailed her as the people's queen, a future queen whose role was more than just a title. The core issue was trust. Catherine's calm warmth and quiet dignity overcame illness and turmoil, becoming a symbol of a new era. To her country, she was not just a crown, but a guiding compass. Standing beside her, almost invisible, was her mother, Carol Middleton. Ever present in a silent way, Carol became a steadfast pillar for the royal family. She helped care for the children, managed household affairs, and offered Catherine a comfort no tutor could replace. Those close to Catherine say Carol always reminded her, "You are a mother before you are a queen." Never forget that. Catherine never forgot. Despite being busy preparing for global tours and national duties, she still found time to braid Charlotte's hair, ask George about his reading, and let Louis sit on her lap during meetings. She wore the crown but still cradled her children. Queen by duty, mother by love. That was the change, not a new person appearing, but someone the world was only beginning to truly understand. A reluctant queen who became the greatest hope of the kingdom. A new royal era born from crisis. When the dust finally settled and the headlines faded, the monarchy did not weaken, it transformed. King Charles's abdication did not break the institution, it redefined it. For the first time in modern memory, the throne was willingly passed on, not because of scandal, force, or love, but because a king chose family over title. In doing so, he may have secured the future of the monarchy in a way no previous reign ever had. Charles's legacy is not measured by the length of his reign, but by the weight of the decisions he made. He became the king who knew when to let go, trading the throne for precious time with his children and grandchildren, choosing presence over ceremony. This choice was not retreat, but profound wisdom. In a world obsessed with power, his surrender became the most powerful act of all. William now leads the nation as a younger, more modern, and more empathetic king. The crown was not handed over with pomp, but forged through responsibility tempered by crisis.
Girls with their nails done.
He stepped into this new chapter not as one who waited, but as one who ascended earlier than expected. His coronation reshaped the world's perception of the monarchy. Beside him, Catherine emerged as more than just a wife. She became a steady hand, a compassionate presence, and a symbol of what the monarchy could become. From a commoner to queen, not through ambition, but through unwavering dedication. Through illness, change, and the sacred role of motherhood, she stood resilient. In doing so, she became the beating heart of a new royal era. As for the children, George, Charlotte, and Louis, they are now growing up in a world that has witnessed their family accomplish the unimaginable. One day, they will read about the day their grandfather stepped down and their parents ascended the throne. And they will understand that they have not inherited an old tradition, but have been entrusted with a transformation. This is the beginning of a monarchy rebuilt on the foundation of truth. Humanity and grace, imperfect, incomplete, yet undeniably real. This new era did not begin with a grand coronation, but was born from a crisis met with courage. It is a new chapter for the crown, not merely about a king's abdication, but the story of a father, a grandfather, a man who understands that legacy is not just etched in stone or sung in hymns, but lives on in moments of quiet peace. A quiet stroll in the garden, a hand gently holding another at breakfast, stories shared by a warm fireside. King Charles III chose to step down from the role he had awaited his entire life, not out of scandal or failure, but out of something far deeper: love. He left the throne to embrace something greater: family, peace, and time, the most precious gift a king can receive. This sacrifice was met with no fanfare, no triumphant declarations. There was no dramatic abdication or nationwide uproar, just a serene moment, a personal decision that resonated louder than any royal decree. He stepped back, not out of defeat, but because he refused to lose sight of his family. In doing so, he bestowed upon them and the nation a rare gift: presence, closeness, and a fleeting glimpse of humanity. For William and Catherine, the weight of destiny arrived earlier than expected. They had yet to recover from life's battles, private grief, relentless public scrutiny, and the immense pressure of raising children under the world's watchful eyes. But when the call came, they did not respond with rehearsed speeches or glittering displays. Instead, they answered with genuine courage, raw and unmasked. Their journey was not marked by grandeur, but by quiet strength. Tears still welled in their eyes, voices occasionally trembled, yet their purpose remained unwavering. They stepped into history not for power, but because duty had summoned them. Not only for the country, but also for their family and themselves, the transfer of power carried a different feeling: humble, vulnerable, and deeply human. In a world often enchanted by the grandeur of the monarchy, their beginning was not marked by crowns or cloaks, but by enduring pain while still holding the future in their hands. This was equally profound for their children, George, Charlotte, and Louis. Their world shifted from bedtime stories and secret hideaways to press conferences and royal ceremonies within a single season. They lost a piece of innocence the day their grandfather laid down the heavy burden of history, and their parents took it up. But within that loss, a special resilience began to grow, not from privilege or tradition, but from the quiet courage of a family carrying their weight together and still finding reasons to smile. That strength was learned through breakfast tables, bedtime prayers from the warm embrace of parents holding their children after long days of duty, and from the image of a grandfather who chose love over legacy. The whole nation changed as well. The monarchy, once distant and tied to marble palaces and ancient ceremonies, became more approachable not by lowering standards but by elevating humanity. Charles's retreat to Balmoral was not an escape, but like a grandfather tending his garden, playing with grandchildren, and quietly keeping a journal, capturing something the people never expected. A royal figure stepping away not due to scandal, but with peace, not out of exhaustion, but out of will. That moment was not weakness, but a shining example for the nation, a symbol of choice and renewal. The crown, a long-standing symbol of endurance, was reimagined as a symbol of emotional intelligence, acknowledging that to rule with love sometimes means learning to let go. 6 months later, the family stood stronger than ever. Balmoral no longer echoed with political briefings, but with children's laughter and the calm presence of a grandfather at peace. Freed from the weight of political expectations, Charles found health and contentment in simplicity. He traded speeches for sketchbooks, schedules for quiet walks. In doing so, he wrote a profound final chapter for his reign, not one of power, but of peace. William and Catherine prepared for the coronation, but more than that, they prepared for the future not as a spectacle, but as a promise to lead with transparency, empathy, and a heart shaped by both hurt and healing. The children were now older, walking with greater confidence, eyes brighter. They were not just heirs, but reflections. The public, once skeptical, now stood united, not because of ceremony, but because of sincerity. The monarchy, long a symbol of grandeur and mystery, had become something rarer, genuine. The figures were no longer just faces in gilded frames, but people who could laugh, cry, stumble, and rise again. A reign ended not with conflict, but with compassion. And in that ending, something new began, a legacy not measured by time on the throne, but by the courage it took to leave it behind. A new chapter has been written not in ink and decree, but through the quiet strength of a family that chose love over tradition, humanity over hierarchy. Can this modern monarchy weather the storms that lie ahead? Can it evolve, adapt, and thrive in a world that demands authenticity more than antiquity? Only time will tell. But if the past few months are any indication, the future of the crown doesn't lie in how high it is worn, but in how gently and meaningfully it is passed on. If you found this story inspiring and thought-provoking, don't forget to hit the like button to show your support. Share this video with your friends and loved ones so we can explore these meaningful royal stories and moments of historical transformation together. And if you don't want to miss our upcoming videos on royal tales, life, and leadership lessons, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you'll know as soon as a new video drops. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.